In what order does Washington unfold his ideas, and to what effect? In this lesson, you will learn to analyze the structure of a text by identifying and evaluating the order of points and ideas. Let's review. We're remembering that Chapter 1, Up from Slavery, is an autobiography of a former slave. We're also remembering that authors are very thoughtful about the order of their ideas and points. They write their ideas down in a specific order such that they support their ultimate purpose in writing the text in the first place. Step 1. Write the purpose of each paragraph in the margins. Step 2. Ask yourself, how does the author order the points he is making? Step 3. Ask yourself, what impact does the order have? Here's a passage I've picked out that begins with the phrase, "The first pair of shoes that I recall wearing were wooden ones." Now, as I read through this, I'm tempted in summarizing the paragraph and writing the purpose, that is, in the margins, I'm tempted to write down a lot of ideas, but I really need to limit it to just the gist of that paragraph. So I'll especially zoom in on this last section where he writes, "I can scarcely imagine any torture except perhaps the pulling of a tooth that is equal to that caused by putting on a new flax shirt for the first time." From this passage, I can say the purpose is to explain how shoes and clothing were extremely uncomfortable or even lacking. The next paragraph I've selected begins with, "One may get the idea from what I have said that there was bitter feeling toward the white people on the part of my race." And it especially goes on to this section near the end where he writes, "I recall the feeling of sorrow which existed among the slaves when they heard of the death of Mars Billy." From this passage I can summarize it to say that despite hard times, black people felt love and loyalty towards the white people. And this last section I've picked out begins with, "From some things that I have said, one may get the idea that some of the slaves did not want freedom. This is not true. I have never seen one who did not want to be free, or one who would return to slavery." In this, I particularly looked at that last sentence. Despite loyalty, as you can see, black people still longed for freedom. And then in the lower paragraph, you could see how slavery really is evil. Or at least this is certainly what Washington is saying. So I've gone through these paragraphs and I've just jotted down just the gist, almost carelessly, the gist of what those paragraphs was about. The next step is to ask yourself, how does the author order the points that he is making? So, that first paragraph I looked at said that shoes and clothing were extremely uncomfortable or lacking. The next one said that despite hard times, black people felt love and loyalty towards the whites. And the third was said that despite loyalty, black people still longed for freedom, and that slavery is evil. So from this progression, the next question then is, what is the effect of having these ideas strung out the way they are? So Washington organizes his ideas such that each new paragraph answers or speaks to questions raised in the previous paragraph. Now, how did I get to that? Well, as I looked at my 3 ideas, those 3 sticky notes, I looked for a relationship. I tried to see how are they organized? What did he do in putting those ideas in that specific order? And that was where I realized that each paragraph seems to raise a question for the reader, and then the next paragraph seems to speak directly to that question. The next step now is, what impact does that order have? So here's what I had just written. Washington organizes his ideas such that each new paragraph answers or speaks to questions raised in the previous paragraph. Let's see about the impact. The way that I'm going to deal with this now is called a brain dump, which is really very similar to a brainstorm. I'm going to just try to spill out my ideas, turning off my internal editor to just see what I can get going on. So what impact does this order have? Well, as a reader, I feel anticipated. It feels like Washington predicted what questions or concerns I might have had about his ideas, and he's answered them tidily for me. This makes me more comfortable with what he says and more likely to believe him. You notice that I began with the phrase, as a reader, I feel. When answering this question, what impact does the order have, it's useful to use a sentence stem such as a reader, I feel, in order to get your brain dump going. So now that I've got my brain dump, I'm going to look through it and see if I have any pearls of wisdom that I can take and use towards answering my question in a better way. And lucky for me, look at this last sentence. This makes me more comfortable with what he says and more likely to believe him. You'll notice that oftentimes in your brain dump or your brainstorm, the pearls of wisdom, the ideas that are really useful, are farther down in the brain dump once your brain has really worked towards them. So now I can use that idea in order to help answer this question. What order does Washington unfold his ideas, and to what effect? So there's my brain dump again with my pearl highlighted in yellow. And now let's see if I can use that to answer this question. Washington unfolds his ideas in such a way that each new idea answers questions that were raised by the previous. By organizing his writing this way, Washington creates a confidence and a sense of comfort in the reader. The reader knows that Washington will anticipate any concerns and answer them soundly. So, the first step was to write the purpose of each paragraph in the margins. Step 2 was to ask yourself, how does the author order the points he is making? And step 3, to ask yourself, what impact does the order have? In this lesson, you have learned to analyze the structure of a text by identifying and evaluating the order of points and ideas.